When life throws curveballs your way, how do you respond?
Hey everyone, this is Aaron and Juwon, and you're listening to Wellness for Real People. This show is for people who are on the go, busy, and looking for ways to live their best lives. We focus on wellness topics in mindfulness, exercise, diet, and sleep, and share quick, actionable tactics to improve your health and wellness. We're not perfect, but we're trying to get a little better each day. Let's grow on this journey together.
Today, we're diving deep into the topic of resilience. And we've got another interesting article from Harvard Health that we're going to dive into with some really practical tips that I think can help us through some difficult times and even some of those times that, just kind of sneak up on us when we're least expecting. My name is Juwan here with my co host, Aaron. We're back for another episode of Wellness for Real People. And let's just dive right into it. Aaron, kind of when we start talking about the subject of resilience, what comes to mind after initially reading this article?
I think even before the article too, just thinking of resilience in the sense of like going through tough times or challenges and kind of like a common phrase that we use, but not necessarily thinking about how to increase or to improve resilience. So one thing I thought about when I read this article was this is great. Like it gave us three quick tips, things that we can actually action on to try to improve our resilience and why it's important to increase our resilience. As you know, things are very difficult now. There's a lot going on in the world, and there always will be. But really, what I found from this article is how do you shift that mindset? How do you become more resilient? And this was a quick, easy article to dive into that kind of gives you some really quick, actionable tips that you can use today to start being a little bit more resilient or thinking more resiliently.
Yeah. So the article starts off talking about Nantucket. This 14-mile long island off the coast of Massachusetts. And the author says, Nantucket has a 40-point resiliency plan to help withstand, the buffeting seas surrounding it as climate change takes a toll. And so maybe there's some things that we can learn from this, some ways that we can all benefit from creating our own, individual resilience plans, like you said, to handle those big and small issues that may sometimes erode our sense of well-being. So, Aaron, what is resilience according to, the article, according to the research? What is resilience? We'll talk about that, and then we can dive into some of those, those three practical tips
Yeah,
from.
Yeah, and so they mentioned that resilience is a psychological response that helps you adapt to life's difficulties and seek a path forward through challenges. And I think that's the most important part is that path forward and what we're going to talk about today. So one of the professors at the Harvard Medical School said it's a flexible mindset that helps you adapt, think critically, and stay focused on your values and what matters most. And the article also goes on to describe that everyone has the ability to be resilient, but your capacity for resilience can take a beating over time from chronic stress, instability, job challenges, the world, whatever's going at you. And the longer you're in those situations, the harder it can become to cope with it. So it is possible to cultivate resilience, but to do so, you got to exercise some skills. And we're going to talk about those three strategies that can help you out to improve your resilience or at least get you moving in the right direction.
Yeah. So the first tip is, shift your thoughts. So they say in stressful situations, try to balance your thoughts by adapting a broader perspective. So this will help you stop thinking with just the emotional part of your brain and start using that kind of thinking part of your brain, that solution oriented part of your brain. So if you're thinking about, hey, I want a raise, but then your mind immediately goes to, no, now's not a good time. I'll never get it. My boss will never agree to it. They say one of the things you can do is just stop when you kind of hear that mental chatter, that voice in your head saying these things. Just take a moment, breathe, and pause, and start to think about the things you've done in your job that are worthy of a raise. And that may get you in a different kind of mindset for how can I actually communicate and advocate for what I'm looking for, rather than just going down this spiral of negativity. So when you slow down the emotional response and shift your mindset from anxious to action is what the doctor says is this tip there. So number one, shift your thoughts. Number two, approach what you want. What was that all about?
Yeah, so we're talking about when you're feeling anxious, stressed out, burnout. You tend to avoid things that make you uncomfortable, and sometimes you feel stuck, right? And oftentimes it's because you're just doing something that you feel that you have to do. So what they recommend in the article is maybe getting out of your comfort zone and trying to take a step toward the thing that you want in spite of fear. And that could come in a million different forms depending on what you're interested in and what you're trying to accomplish, or things that you just think about all the time. So it could be a personal goal, whether it's like more increased health, or if you want to be, a little bit more thoughtful and forward with how you spend time with your family, or whatever that looks like. Trying to be more intentional and taking action towards that and scheduling time for it and going after it can help with your resiliency when you have to deal with all these other challenges, when you're stressed out or burnt out or whatever's going on in life, because ultimately you feel like you're working towards something that's valuable and worth your time. And so you can more easily cope with some of those other challenges. And it doesn't have to be a big step. Like, we're very much advocates of small little changes, whether it might be just spending a little bit more time at the end of the day with your kids, or reading a book, or taking a walk, or whatever that looks like. Just making those steps to kind of approach more of what you want will help you dealing with some of that when you're going through those challenges and difficulties.
Yeah, one of the examples that they use in the article that I thought was very, very relevant was this idea of, when you're in an argument or not seeing eye to eye with your significant other, and maybe our initial reaction is to retreat or avoid the situation. But in this case, the authors talk about the importance, like as you mentioned, of
Mm-hmm.
leaning into that, right? And actually schedule, let's say maybe, okay, I'm really upset right now. I don't want to say anything harmful, but let's schedule some time for us
Yeah.
to really sit down and actually address this rather than just kind of let this linger. So I love that idea of like facing the thing, that's challenging you most. There's a lot of phrases that come to mind. Brian Tracy had a great book called "Eat That Frog," right?
Yep.
We'll do the most challenging thing you need to do first and foremost in the day. Or there's another great book, I think it's by Ryan Holiday. It's called "The Obstacle Is the Way."
Yep.
So this principle comes up again and again, as rather than running from some of these issues or challenges like that you mentioned, that can erode some of your resiliency and some of that self confidence, self assuredness. Take a breather and find a way to address and embrace sometimes the discomfort in some of the things. Like you said, one little step at a time. Don't got to solve the whole world immediately, but just take it.
This will cause probably more stress. If we
Yeah.
fix the whole problem today, it's just not realistic. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be. You can definitely just start making small steps and communicating more, sharing more, doing more, a little bit more. It'll get you there.
Yeah. So the third step or tip that they offered in the article was align your actions with your values. It says a great quote from the article: stress happens when your actions are not aligned with your values, the things that matter most to you or bring you joy. So, for example, you might start feeling stressed if you care most about your family, but you can't be there for dinner. Um, and I thought that was a really interesting way to frame stress as this idea of like being out of alignment.
Mm,
This kind of caught in the middle between two different things, between what you believe is important, but what is actually happening, in your day-to-day life. And if we can find some, happy medium, get some alignment between those things, then that may help reduce some of that stress that we're feeling. And so one quick suggestion that they brought up in this section was take some time and identify your top three values and make sure that your daily actions align with them. So if family is really, really important to you, maybe you make sure that you schedule some time to have one meal, just one meal a day, with your family to try to get in some of that
yeah.
quality time.
Yeah. And no, I love that too, man. I think it's a lot of times too in our careers and things that we're doing is where, maybe it is just one simple thing of aligning our actions. If we want to be in a different career, we want to be doing something a little differently. Maybe it's just taking the time to send a message to someone on LinkedIn that is doing what you want to do and ask if you can meet with them. And most times they'll say yes. But, just taking that small step of sending like a message like, hey, I'm just really interested, or I'm like stuck in my role, or whatever it is, that simple thing that's going to move the needle a little bit, it's going to make all the difference.
Yeah, I love that. And we talk about the show, a lot of the guiding principles for the show, or the pillars of the show, mindfulness, exercise, diet, sleep, is really important for having a healthy, kind of well balanced life and lifestyle. And so I'm thinking about those pillars, and putting them in the context of, like, what are the daily actions, right, that I can do to continue to align uh, with those, to make sure that I have hopefully put myself in the best position possible to have a long and healthy life. And so from an, exercise perspective, that may look like, scheduling, even if it's 10 minutes. Sometimes in the morning, it's just like 10 minutes, 5 minutes sometimes, if I'm really stressed, just
Yeah.
to stretch, right? Just to move my body,
You don't need equipment. You don't need any special location. You can do
right.
that anywhere.
Right, exactly. Another thing we've been doing, which has been I've really enjoyed it over the last month, is doing a family walk after dinner. I get to get
That's
some
cool.
family time in, quality
Yeah.
family time in, and do some exercise at the same time. And it takes about 10 or 15 minutes, and I just bring so much joy to my day, and it's something I've really come to look forward to. And it's just like you mentioned, not changing the world, not going to immediately become an Iron Man just going on these little 15-minute walks, but I actually feel a lot better. And so I think, as we talk about all the time, it's like these little actions do add up. They make a big difference
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the article does some good, um, I would say good recommendations of some healthy lifestyle habits to include. These are going to be beneficial regardless. Some of them are kind of multi-factor. So we talk about sleep. Getting 7 to 9 hours for sleep is recommended. Following a healthy diet, such as Mediterranean style, we discussed that before. It doesn't have to be that, but it's just one example. Getting 150 minutes of exercise, brisk walking, whatever that looks like, strength training, at least twice a week. Limiting your alcohol, limiting or not smoking at all for health, and then staying socially connected. So this is exactly what you talked about, doing those walks with your family. Not only is it a healthy habit, but you're also connecting socially. So it's like you could even combine some of those things to get the most out of it. So I think the article does a good job of giving you some ideas, and then they also offer some resources which we can share in the show notes about additional trainings of how you can do a little bit more for resiliency and how do you improve that. There's some online courses and things they recommend. We can throw that in the notes later for you guys to check out. But there are a lot of ways to do this.
Yeah. And, those points, the tips that you just shared, I just think they're really, really powerful and important. Going back to the analogy that the author used at the beginning, right? For Nantucket, and they have this 40-point resiliency
Right.
plan, right, to mitigate the effects of global warming or climate change. Uh, and I think these simple things that you just listed off are those kind of foundational practices and principles and daily actions that are going to give us the strength and ability to weather some of these storms that life will inevitably throw at us, as you mentioned before. And so these things seem simple and simple enough not to do, so many times when we get busy or get distracted, but it's actually these simple actions done repeatedly over time that give us the ability to stick with the things that we want to accomplish, and ultimately live hopefully a happy and healthy life. So um this has been another really enlightening, short but enlightening article for me, and I've enjoyed talking through it with you. I hope if you're watching this or listening to this, that you got something practical that you can apply to your daily life. And as Aaron mentioned, we will link to the exact article in the show notes. But this is about all I got. Anything else you want to add to this discussion?
No. Just like the biggest thing like is also consistency. It's like, we give you the tips, we do the things, but keeping up with them over time is going to help with those challenging moments.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess with that in mind, one step at a time, one day at a time, let's build our own individual resilience plans. And, we'll see you very soon with another episode of Wellness for Real People. In the meantime, take care.
Thank you.